Beware the Fish by Gordon Korman. Take cover. The next evening, in a corner of the squad room of the Chutney police station, Featherstone and Hamilton pored over a large map of Chutney and the surrounding district. They had been up all night comparing notes on their observations and experiences, and had been working most of the day on the map. "Now," said Hamilton, "we've got a black X in every area where there have been complaints of fish broadcasts. Let's see if we can find out where they're coming from." Both men studied the map intently for a minute. "The area is round," commented Featherstone to break the monotony. "So it is," agreed Hamilton. "As a matter of fact," added Featherstone, "it's almost a perfect circle, so the broadcasts have to be coming from the center of the circle," finished Hamilton. He laid a long, bony finger on the map. "That would be right here." Featherstone beckoned to the desk sergeant and pointed to the center of the circle. "What's located there?" The man scratched his head. "Schools," he replied. "Yeah, 2 boarding schools, right across the road from each other." "Schools," mused Hamilton. "That's impossible, just children." "Yes, definitely 2 schools," confirmed the sergeant. "One's a girls' finishing school called Scrimmages, and the other's a boys' school. It's called MacDonald Hall." "That's M.H., cried Featherstone. "M.H. Flying Fish, written on that bomb. This is what we've been looking for, MacDonald Hall." "But a bunch of kids?" protested Hamilton. "Kids have teachers," Featherstone insisted in growing excitement. "And teachers are adults. One of those adults is the fish." "The perfect cover," agreed Hamilton slowly. "No one would think to investigate for terrorist activity in a school. This fish is a clever one." "We don't know who we're after, so we'll have to restrict the whole place," decided Featherstone. "We'll need barriers and men. Sergeant, can you help us?" "Well," offered the desk sergeant, "we've only got 8 men on the Chutney force, but you can get any support you need from the county police." "Good," said Featherstone. "Tonight we bring in the fish." "What happened?" bawled Elmer Grimsdale, home from his field trip. "Where are all my things?" The room looked empty without all the equipment. The only things left were the plants in the ant colony. "What have you done?" "We buried them," explained Bruno. "You what?" "Listen, Elmer, you're lucky we don't bury you, too," snapped Boots. "It's all your fault, you and your video machine." Elmer just stood there stunned. "You told us it would only broadcast to the screen on your black box," accused Bruno. "That thing has been telecasting my fish jokes and your idiot salmon all over the country. Or all over the county." "Remarkable," breathed Elmer. Yeah, the fish thought so too," said Bruno bitterly. "He was pretty sure it was us, but he couldn't prove it. So he called a big dorm inspection. We had to get rid of your stuff, or the 3 of us would have been expelled." Elmer looked as if he were about to faint. "Expelled? I was almost expelled and I didn't even know it," he exclaimed weakly. "You did the right thing. I hope you buried it deep enough." "Time will tell," said Boots. "And the next high jump." "We passed inspection by the skin of our teeth," added Bruno. "We had to borrow a rug to cover up the holes in the floor where you bolted down the video machine." "So we weren't caught then?" asked Elmer in a small, hopeful voice. "Hey," boasted Bruno, "I never get caught." "Still," said Boots, "the way the fish looked at us makes me nervous. He knows." "It was an honest mistake," babbled Elmer. "How was I to know that I would get such range without an antenna?" "No one's blaming you, Elm," said Bruno kindly. "I am," snapped Boots feelingly. "You get me into enough trouble. You don't need any help from Elmer." "I'm a failure," lamented Elmer despondently. "I wanted so much to help save MacDonald Hall. I'm no good for anything." "Don't be an idiot," said Bruno, glaring at Boots. "That's just it," moaned Elmer. "I am an idiot." Boots sighed. "You're a genius," he corrected firmly. "You've worked harder than anyone else on this project. It's just that, well, I guess even a genius fouls up once in a while." "And you're our friend," said Bruno. "And our roommate," added Boots. Elmer brightened. "It's so good to have friends." He looked up at the bare white wall. at the bare wall where his beloved salmon poster hung. It's a good thing I have several more in the dresser. Bruno looked at Boots. No you don't, they chorused. We didn't get expelled, sighed Elmer, but at what cost? 7 cars, their headlights out, pulled silently onto the soft shoulder of the highway near McDonald Hall. 30 shadowy figures left the cars and gathered in a group for a final briefing. Okay, men, said Featherstone. This is it. I want the whole campus surrounded. Everyone is under restriction. No one goes in or out. What about the kids? Asked the Chutney patrolman. They don't go in or out either, said Hamilton. Who knows how many the fish has influenced? So watch them, cautioned Featherstone, and remember, we don't want anyone hurt. When the fish is cornered, he may try to take the kids as hostages. He cleared his throat and raised his voice so the whole group could hear him. We'll give you 5 minutes to spread out around the perimeter. Then Hamilton and I are going in with Kowalski and Baker. The men stole away in the darkness to take up their assigned positions. Featherstone, Hamilton, and the 2 patrolmen got into Hamilton's unmarked car and turned into the McDonald Hall driveway. Seeing a light on in the faculty building, they stopped the car in front of it and got out. Mr. Sturgeon himself came out to greet them. Good evening, he said courteously, but without enthusiasm. You gentlemen must be from the land developer's office. I've been told to expect you. Are you in charge here? Asked Featherstone. Yes, I'm the headmaster. Sturgeon is my name. Sturgeon, exclaimed Featherstone. That's a kind of fish, isn't it? How clever of you to have noticed, Mr. Sturgeon remarked, eyeing Featherstone coldly. Whipping out his badge, Featherstone announced, We've got you now, fish! Mr. Sturgeon stared at him. I beg your pardon? Do you think we don't know what you've been doing? Did you think you could get away with it forever? Featherstone was basking in the glory of his first capture. Oh no, we've got you now, fish! You and your fish patrol are finished. The long arm of the law has caught up with you, he nodded to the taller of the 2 patrolmen. Take him, Kowalski! Kowalski stepped forward and swiftly handcuffed himself to Mr. Sturgeon. The headmaster was livid. What in the world do you think? Hamilton reached into the car and produced an electric megaphone. Attention! His voice boomed across the campus. McDonald Hall is now under restriction. No one is to enter or leave the grounds. Repeat, no one is allowed to enter or leave. If you would kindly explain, Mr. Sturgeon insisted. You'll get all the explanation you want, snapped Featherstone. In front of a judge! But the announcement had aroused the boys of McDonald Hall, and a swarm of them, headed by Bruno and Boots, stampeded onto the scene. Look! Blurted Bruno before he realized that he was shouting loud enough for the police and the headmaster to hear. Those guys have busted the fish! Featherstone turned in horror to Hamilton. Did you hear that? Even the kids know he's the fish. There's nothing more contemptible than involving children in terrorist acts. He faced Mr. Sturgeon. I'm going to see that you're locked up for 500 years. Mr. Sturgeon just stood there, shocked beyond words. What's going on? Asked one of the students. The fish got busted. But why? I don't know. They're taking him away. I can't see anything. Get off my foot. What did the fish do? Probably robbed a bank. I wonder how long he'll get. Yep, that was it. He robbed a bank. This is all a ridiculous mistake, insisted Mr. Sturgeon. Yeah, and you made it, jibed Hamilton with great satisfaction. Near the entrance to the driveway, the land developer's new black limousine pulled up and was stopped by 3 police officers. The developer rolled down his window. What's going on? I have a business appointment here. An appointment here, eh? Answered one of the officers. Get out of the car, sir, and keep your hands where we can see them. What are you, nuts? No, sir, not nuts, returned the policeman. Just doing our job. Your chauffeur, too, please. Both of you. Get into the first patrol car over there. Are we being arrested? Demanded the developer in bewilderment. No, sir, just detained. Into the patrol car, please. An officer will take your statement. Hamilton's voice boomed across the campus again. Everyone keep calm. Everything is under control. There is no need for alarm. The entire population of McDonald Hall was milling around in confusion in front of the faculty building. Let him go, bellowed Bruno at a nervous-looking Kowalski. Whatever it is, he didn't do it. I can vouch for him. Mr. Sturgeon was still trying to reason with Featherstone. "Officer, if you will just listen to me." "You'll have plenty of time to talk," shouted Featherstone over the din, "when we get you and your fish patrol down to the station." "He's a nice guy," shouted Bruno from the crowd. "Yeah," shouted many of the students in agreement. Across the road, Miss Scrimmage's PA system burst into life with Kathy Burton's voice. "Attention girls! McDonald Hall is being invaded. They need our help. Let's go." Instantly, a stream of girls burst out through the door and thundered across the highway to the McDonald Hall driveway. They did not even see the 3 officers who made half-hearted attempts to block their way. Scrimmage's girls were stopped by nothing. They stampeded onto the campus and ran toward the crowd of boys. "Oh, no!" shouted Featherstone, appalled. "Is everyone in on this? Hamilton, do something!" Girls were already mixing with the milling crowd of boys, making the scene even more chaotic. "Go away!" shouted Hamilton desperately over the megaphone. "Go back! This is a restricted area. Please go away." On her balcony, Miss Scrimmage stood screaming at her girls and waving her shotgun. "Girls! Girls, come back here at once. Please come back." She stubbed her toe and tripped. Boom! The shotgun went off and pellets tore into the sand of the high jump pit just inside the McDonald Hall grounds. "It's that crazy lady," shouted the developer in the shocked silence that followed the shotgun blast. "Arrest her! Don't let her near my new car!" A loud, bubbling hiss rose from the pit as Elmer Drimsdale's spilled chemicals and equipment began to react to the disturbance beneath the thin layer of sand. Then the hiss faded, and for a moment, you could hear a pin drop. Suddenly, the silence was pierced by Elmer's half-crazed scream. "Oh, no! Take cover!" At that very moment, there was a tremendous explosion. The entire sand pit rose upward in a huge fireball, illuminating the dark campus. Sand mingled with bits of the buried equipment shot into the air. The crowd was engulfed in a rain of charred salmon posters. A second explosion followed, then a third, and finally what looked and sounded like a brilliant firework display. "Hold your positions, men!" screamed Featherstone, crouching behind the flagpole as the barrage continued. A salmon poster fluttered down beside him, and he stared at it in disbelief. From her balcony, Miss Scrimmage gazed in horror at the havoc below. "Help! Police!" she wailed. "What's all this racket?" bellowed Coach Flynn from his window. The sight that met his eyes shocked him so much that he leaned over too far and toppled into the bushes around Dormitory 2. "Everybody remain calm," shrieked Hamilton's terrified voice over the megaphone. "This is—" The wind caught a salmon poster and slapped it right up against his face. Abruptly, the explosion ceased, and the silence that followed, the howling approaching of sirens. And in the silence that followed, the howling approaching of sirens could be heard. Timidly, Bruno lifted his head in time to see a large fire engine roar up and stop beside the developer's blazing limousine. Miraculously, nothing else was on fire and no one seemed to be hurt. "My car!" howled the developer from the floor of the police cruiser. His chauffeur was in tears. "That crazy woman blew up my new car!" "Look!" exclaimed Boots breathlessly, pointing to the road. The highway was choked with cars, and a crowd of spectators stood on the edge of the campus, staring curiously at the goings-on. Miss Scrimmage's lawn was completely covered by parked vehicles, among them the Chut TV mobile unit. A man with a microphone bearing the call letters of a Toronto radio station was interviewing Sidney Rampolsky, who stood with a handkerchief to his bloody nose. "No, I wasn't injured in the explosion," Sidney was saying. "I fell down." News travels fast. More and more members of the media arrived on the scene in the hope of getting a good story out of what was going on at McDonald Hall. "It's an invasion," Kathy Burton was telling a crowd of reporters. She smiled for a photographer, her sweetest smile. "Right over there." She pointed to the flagpole where Mr. Sturgeon and the 4 policemen were just getting to their feet amid a confused crowd of students. Not wanting to leave anyone out, Kathy turned to the crowd. "Right there. That's where the story is. By the flagpole. Over there." With Kathy in the lead, the entire swarm of reporters, interviewers, TV cameramen, and photographers, as well as curious observers, converged on the flagpole. Kathy snatched the confused Hamilton's megaphone and addressed the crowd. "Here he is," she cried, indicating the disheveled Mr. Sturgeon. "He holds the answer to the whole thing. Take it away, sir." Featherstone was sure he should have been doing something, But he could not imagine what. His training manual had let him down again. Mr. Sturgeon was in the spotlight. All cameras were focused on him. Reporters stood there, pencils poised, waiting for his remarks. Bruno Walton pushed his way through the crowd and ran to the headmaster. "I confess," he cried. "It's all my fault." Boots burst onto the scene and ran to his side. "And mine!" Elmer Grimsdale appeared, stiff-lipped and straight-backed. "No!" he shouted dramatically. "I am responsible." Mr. Sturgeon gathered his dignity at last and rose to his full height, facing Kowalski. "You will remove this ridiculous handcuff at once," he ordered quietly. Kowalski looked at Featherstone, who, hopelessly confused and uncertain, nodded feebly. The cuffs came off. "You see," Bruno was explaining to the crowd of media people, "it all started when we found out that MacDonald Hall was going broke." "Walton, that will do," said Mr. Sturgeon quietly. Bruno turned an impassioned face to his headmaster. "I don't think so, sir," he said earnestly. "Even though it's too late, I think everybody should know about MacDonald Hall." He turned back to the reporters amid a popping of flashbulbs. "How about how a good school can go under in this day and age, and nobody knows or cares?" "We care," chorused the student body of MacDonald Hall and Miss Scrimmages combined. "We sure do," exclaimed Bruno. "And we've been trying to save our school." The orator in him fully aroused. Bruno was in high gear. "We tried to get publicity for our cause so that enrollment would go up and the school would be saved. But everything we did turned out wrong. We lost our pop cans, and none of Elmer's inventions worked properly, so we couldn't become famous or set a world record or be the home of some great invention and get great publicity that would save everything. It just didn't work out." "What a human interest story!" exclaimed one of the reporters. "Go on, go on." "Elmer was trying to invent a new kind of video," Bruno continued. "I didn't know it was broadcasting that fish to the whole county. I was just playing with it. And you were getting suspicious, sir, so to avoid any trouble we had to bury it, along with Elmer's other things, like his remote control device and his chemistry stuff. We buried it all in the sand pit that used to be over there, and when Miss Scrimmage shot into it, I guess it blew up, and that's the whole story." "We couldn't just let MacDonald Hall go down without a fight," added Boots. They looked desperately at their headmaster. He stood strangely still, saying nothing. "So where did the police come in?" asked one of the reporters. Featherstone snapped out of his trance. "Ah, yes," he began. "We were, investigating. Isn't that right, Hamilton?" "Yeah," said Hamilton. "That's right, investigating." "Oh, I get it," said the newsman. "You discovered MacDonald Hall's problem and you were helping them get publicity." "Ah, right," said Featherstone gratefully. "This is a very fine school," added Hamilton, "and it shouldn't be allowed to close down. Today's police take an active interest in the education of our youth." "Hey," said a photographer, "seeing as we missed the fireworks, let's get a shot of you two police guys shaking hands with the headmaster." Another photographer walked up to Bruno. "I'd like a shot of you and your two friends with the headmaster." "But why," asked someone, "did this Miss Scrimmage shoot bullets into the sand pit?" "Oh, that was an accident," put in Kathy. "Miss Scrimmage never shoots anything on purpose." Cameras clicked, pencils scribbled, videotapes rolled. It was 2 hours before Mr. Sturgeon finally called a halt to the impromptu press conference, cleared the campus, and sent his boys to bed. And that's the end of the chapter.